Welcome to
our channel.
Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are going to explore something that happens every single day, often without us even noticing: decision-making.
That is a fascinating topic because people make decisions constantly. From small choices like what to eat for breakfast to major choices about careers, relationships, and the future.
Exactly. Sometimes we think of decisions as big moments that change our lives, but actually, our daily choices shape our lives little by little.
That is a very important point.
For example, choosing what we spend our time on, what information we consume, and what habits we build can have a huge impact over time.
Yes, small decisions may seem unimportant in the moment, but repeated choices can create very different results.
It is interesting because most people believe they are in control of their decisions.
But psychology shows that many hidden factors influence the choices we make.
Such as emotions, habits, past experiences, and even the environment around us.
Exactly.
When people hear the word decision-making, they often imagine someone carefully thinking about all the options.
Yes, we like to believe we are completely logical.
But are humans really as rational as we think?
Not always.
That is a surprising answer.
Human beings are capable of logical thinking, but our brains also use shortcuts to make decisions faster.
Shortcuts?
Yes, psychologists often call them mental shortcuts. They help us make quick decisions without analyzing everything in detail.
That sounds useful.
It is useful. Imagine if you had to carefully analyze every small decision every day.
Like deciding which direction to walk or how to respond to a simple message.
Exactly, life would become exhausting.
So these mental shortcuts help us save energy.
Right.
But can they also create problems?
Definitely.
How?
Because shortcuts are not always accurate. Sometimes they create biases that influence our judgment.
Biases?
Yes, a bias is a tendency to think in a certain way, sometimes without realizing it.
So people can make decisions based on patterns in their minds, rather than complete information.
Exactly.
Can you give an everyday example?
Sure, imagine you meet someone for the first time. Within seconds, you may form an opinion about that person.
Even though you know very little about them.
Exactly.
Maybe you judge them based on their appearance, voice, or behavior.
Right.
But that first impression may not represent who they really are.
Exactly.
It is interesting because first impressions feel very powerful.
They do.
Sometimes people say, "I just had a feeling about that person."
Yes.
But that feeling may come from many hidden influences.
Exactly.
Previous experiences,
Past memories,
personal expectations.
cultural background.
So even our feelings can be influenced by things we are not aware of.
That is one of the fascinating parts of psychology.
This makes me wonder, if our decisions are influenced by so many hidden factors, can we actually make better decisions?
Absolutely.
How?
The first step is awareness.
Understanding that our minds have patterns.
Exactly.
Once we recognize those patterns, we can start questioning them.
Right.
That sounds simple, but it probably requires practice.
It does.
Because most decisions happen automatically.
Yes.
We follow habits.
We follow emotions.
We follow familiar patterns.
Exactly.
Let's talk about habits, because they seem closely connected to decisions.
They are.
Many people think habits are just things we do repeatedly.
But habits are actually automatic decisions.
Automatic decisions.
Yes, when a behavior becomes a habit, our brain no longer needs to spend much energy deciding whether to do it.
That explains why habits can be so powerful.
Exactly.
A person who exercises regularly does not have to debate every morning whether they should exercise.
Right.
A person who always checks their phone after waking up may do it without thinking.
Exactly.
So habits can work in our favor or against us.
Absolutely.
A good habit makes positive choices easier.
Yes.
A bad habit makes choices harder.
Exactly.
This means improving our lives is not only about making better decisions in difficult moments.
It is also about creating systems that make better decisions automatic.
That is a very interesting idea. For example, someone who wants to eat healthier may rely on willpower.
Yes.
But willpower can become weaker over time.
Exactly.
A better strategy might be changing the environment.
Right.
preparing healthy food in advance.
making unhealthy choices less convenient.
So the environment influences decisions.
A lot.
This is something many people do not think about.
Yes,
They believe success depends only on personal motivation.
but the environment around us plays a huge role.
The people we spend time with.
The information we consume.
The places we spend our time.
Exactly.
It seems like understanding decision-making requires understanding ourselves.
Yes.
Our emotions,
Our habits.
our assumptions,
Our environment.
everything is connected.
Exactly.
When we start paying attention to our decisions, one thing becomes clear. Many choices that feel completely personal are actually influenced by the world around us. We often believe we are choosing freely, but our surroundings, experiences, and emotions quietly guide us in certain directions.
That is one of the most interesting discoveries in psychology. People usually imagine decisions happening inside their own minds, as if they are separated from everything else. But in reality, our decisions are connected to our environment. The people around us, the information we receive, and even the physical spaces we spend time in can influence what we choose.
A good example is shopping. Many people believe they buy things because they need them, but sometimes the decision happens before they even realize it. The design of a store, the position of a product, the words used in advertisements, and even the emotions they feel at that moment can affect their choices.
Yes, and companies spend a lot of time studying human behavior because they understand that buying decisions are not always based on pure logic. A person may buy a product not because it is the most practical option, but because it represents a feeling they want to experience.
For example, someone might buy an expensive watch not only because they need to know the time. The watch may represent success, confidence, or a certain identity they want to have.
Right, many products are connected with emotions and personal stories. People are not only buying objects, they are often buying the meaning attached to those objects.
This idea also explains why people sometimes make decisions that they later regret. They look back and wonder, why did I do that? But at the moment of making the decision, that choice may have satisfied an emotional need.
That is a very important point. Human decisions are not only about solving problems, they are also about managing emotions. Sometimes people choose something because it makes them feel better immediately, even if it creates problems later.
A simple example is procrastination. Many people describe procrastination as laziness, but psychology suggests it is often connected to emotions.
Yes, when people avoid a task, they are not always avoiding the work itself. Sometimes they are avoiding the uncomfortable feelings connected with the work, such as fear of failure, pressure, or uncertainty.
So someone may say, I don't feel like working today. But underneath that feeling there may be a deeper reason.
Exactly, maybe the task feels overwhelming. Maybe they are worried they will not do it well. Maybe they do not know where to start.
That changes the way we look at procrastination. Instead of simply blaming ourselves, we can ask a better question. What feeling am I trying to avoid?
This connects to another important part of decision-making, the difference between short-term and long-term thinking.
That is something many people struggle with. Our brains naturally pay attention to immediate rewards because they feel more real than future benefits.
Yes, a future goal can be difficult to imagine because it does not exist yet, but an immediate reward is right in front of us.
For example, choosing to watch videos for another hour feels enjoyable now, while the benefit of studying for an exam may only appear weeks later.
Exactly. The brain often gives stronger attention to what is happening today than what might happen in the future.
This explains why people sometimes know what they should do, but still choose something else.
Right, it is not always a lack of knowledge. Sometimes it is a conflict between immediate emotions and future goals.
I find this topic especially interesting because it shows that becoming better at decision-making is not just about becoming smarter. It is about understanding how our minds work.
Absolutely. A person can be highly intelligent and still make poor decisions if they do not understand their own patterns.
For example, someone may know that saving money is important, but if they constantly respond to emotional impulses, their knowledge alone may not change their behavior.
That is why self-awareness is so important. When people understand their triggers, they can create strategies to make better choices.
Instead of relying only on willpower.
Exactly, willpower is useful, but it is limited. A better approach is designing your environment and habits so that good decisions become easier.
This brings us to another fascinating area, the influence of other people. Humans are social beings, and our decisions are often shaped by the people around us.
Yes, we like to believe we are independent thinkers, but social influence is much stronger than many people realize.
Sometimes we change our opinions because we want to belong.
Sometimes we copy behaviors because they are common around us.
Sometimes we choose certain lifestyles because they are considered successful by society.
Exactly. Social influence can be helpful because humans learn from each other, but it can also cause problems when we stop thinking for ourselves.
That is an important balance. Learning from others is valuable, but blindly following others can prevent us from making choices that truly fit our own lives. When we talk about social influence, one of the most interesting things is that people often underestimate how much they are affected by the people around them. We usually imagine ourselves as independent individuals making our own choices, but human beings have always depended on groups for information, safety, and belonging.
That is true. From an evolutionary perspective, paying attention to other people was extremely important. If a group of people reacted to something as dangerous, it made sense for others to pay attention. This ability helped humans survive. But in modern life, the same instinct can sometimes influence decisions in ways we do not notice.
A simple example is trends. A new product, a style of clothing, or even a way of speaking can suddenly become popular. Many people start following it, not necessarily because they personally evaluated it, but because they see many others doing the same thing.
Right, there is a psychological effect behind this called social proof. When people are uncertain, they often look at what others are doing as a way to decide what is correct or valuable.
That explains why restaurants with long lines sometimes attract more customers. People may think, if so many people are waiting, this place must be good.
Exactly, the behavior of others becomes a signal. It reduces uncertainty and makes decisions feel easier.
But social proof can also create problems. Popular does not always mean correct.
Absolutely. History has shown many examples where large groups of people believed something that later turned out to be wrong.
So one important skill is learning when to follow others and when to think independently.
Yes, social influence itself is not the problem. The problem is losing our ability to question and evaluate information.
That requires confidence.
It does. Independent thinking requires the ability to accept that your choice may be different from the majority.
And that can feel uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable sometimes.
I think discomfort is actually a major theme in decision-making. Many difficult choices are difficult not because we do not know the answer, but because the answer requires us to experience an uncomfortable feeling.
That is a very insightful point. People often avoid decisions because they want to avoid uncertainty, disappointment, or possible failure.
For example, someone may know they should have an important conversation with another person, but they keep delaying it.
Not because they do not understand the situation, but because they want to avoid the emotional difficulty of that conversation.
So avoiding a decision is also a decision.
Exactly.
Choosing not to act still creates consequences.
Yes, sometimes people forget that waiting is not neutral. Time continues moving, and circumstances continue changing.
This is why emotional intelligence becomes so important. If people cannot recognize their own emotions, those emotions can quietly control their decisions.
Absolutely, emotions are not enemies. They provide useful information. The problem happens when we react automatically without understanding what we are feeling.
For example, anger can tell us that something feels unfair.
Fear can tell us that something feels risky.
Sadness can show us that something matters to us.
Exactly.
The goal is not to remove emotions from decision-making.
Right, the goal is to include emotions while also using reflection and reasoning.
That balance sounds simple, but it is probably one of the hardest skills to develop.
It takes practice. Many people either ignore emotions completely and focus only on logic, or they allow emotions to make every decision.
So there are two extremes.
Yes, someone who ignores emotions may make choices that look logical, but do not match their values. Someone who follows every emotion may make choices that feel good temporarily, but create problems later.
The ideal approach is somewhere in the middle.
Exactly. Good decisions often come from combining emotional awareness with clear thinking.
Let's talk about another factor that influences decisions: the way we see ourselves.
That is a fascinating area, because identity has a huge effect on behavior.
What do you mean by identity?
The beliefs we have about who we are. For example, someone may think, I am a person who enjoys learning, or I am someone who is not good with numbers.
And those beliefs influence future choices.
Exactly.
So if someone believes they are not creative, they may avoid creative activities.
Yes,
If someone believes they are bad at communication, they may avoid situations where they need to speak.
right.
This suggests that changing our decisions sometimes requires changing the way we see ourselves.
Absolutely.
Instead of saying, I am not disciplined, someone might say, I am learning how to build better habits.
That small change in language can create a different mindset,
Because one statement creates a fixed identity,
while the other creates room for growth.
and that affects future behavior.
Exactly.
I think this is one reason personal development is difficult. People often try to change their actions without changing the beliefs behind those actions.
That is a very common problem.
Someone may try to exercise more, save money, or learn a skill.
But if they still see themselves as someone who cannot succeed, maintaining the change becomes much harder.
So long-term change begins from inside.
Yes, behavior follows identity more often than people realize.
After discussing all these influences, someone might wonder, if our decisions are affected by so many hidden factors, do we really have freedom of choice?
That is one of the biggest questions in psychology and philosophy.
How would you answer it?
I would say we have influence, but we are not completely controlled. Understanding these influences actually gives us more freedom because awareness allows us to make better choices.
So knowledge about ourselves becomes a form of power.
Exactly.
That is a great place to continue from because the next question is practical. If we understand how decisions work, how can we actually improve our choices in daily life?
Yes, understanding the psychology is only the first step. The real value comes from applying it.
Now that we understand some of the hidden forces behind our decisions, the next question becomes much more practical. How can we actually make better choices in everyday life?
That is where psychology becomes especially useful. Understanding how the mind works is interesting, but the real benefit comes when we can use that knowledge to improve our behavior.
One thing I find interesting is that many people believe better decisions come from simply thinking harder.
Yes, people often assume that if they spend more time analyzing a problem, they will automatically make the right choice.
But that is not always true.
Exactly. More thinking does not always mean better thinking. Sometimes too much information can make decisions even more difficult.
Because people become overwhelmed by too many options.
Right, this is sometimes called decision fatigue.
Decision fatigue happens when people make too many choices, and their mental energy becomes exhausted.
Exactly. The quality of decisions can decrease when the brain has been making choices all day.
A simple example is something many people experience after work. During the day, they make countless decisions. What to do first, how to solve problems, how to communicate with others.
Then by the evening, even a simple decision like what to eat for dinner can feel surprisingly difficult.
It is not because choosing dinner is complicated.
It is because the brain has already spent a lot of energy making decisions.
That explains why some successful people simplify their routines.
Yes, they reduce unnecessary decisions, so they can save energy for the choices that really matter.
For example, wearing similar types of clothing every day,
Or creating regular routines.
or preparing plans in advance.
Exactly.
This idea changes the way we think about discipline. Many people believe disciplined people simply have stronger willpower.
But often, disciplined people create environments where good choices become easier.
So discipline is not only about forcing yourself.
Right, it is also about designing your life.
Can you give an example?
Imagine someone wants to read more books. They could rely on motivation and hope they remember to read every night.
Which may work sometimes.
Yes, but a stronger approach would be creating a system. Keep the book somewhere visible, set a regular reading time, and remove distractions.
So the environment supports the decision.
Exactly.
This connects back to habits. A single decision may not seem powerful, but repeated decisions create patterns.
Yes, a person's life is often the result of thousands of repeated choices.
The food they eat,
The thoughts they repeat.
the people they spend time with,
The skills they practice.
the information they consume.
Exactly.
Sometimes people wait for a major moment to change their lives.
Yes, they think they need one big decision that will transform everything.
But real change often happens through small decisions, repeated consistently.
That is one of the most important lessons about behavior.
For example, learning a language does not usually happen because of one intense study session.
It happens because of regular practice over time.
Building physical health works the same way.
Building financial stability works the same way.
Personal growth works the same way.
Exactly.
Another important part of decision-making is learning how to deal with uncertainty.
That is difficult because humans naturally want clear answers.
We want to know whether a choice will succeed before we make it.
Yes.
But many important decisions do not come with guarantees.
Exactly.
Choosing a career,
Starting a business.
moving to a new place,
Beginning a new relationship.
all of these involve uncertainty.
Right.
So how can people make decisions when they do not know the outcome?
I think the key is changing the way we think about decisions. A decision is not always about predicting the future perfectly. Sometimes it is about choosing the best option with the information available.
That is a much more realistic approach.
Yes, waiting for complete certainty can become another form of avoidance.
Because complete certainty rarely exists.
Exactly.
This reminds me of how people sometimes judge past decisions unfairly.
Yes.
They look back with information they did not have at the time and say, I should have known better.
That is called hindsight bias.
Meaning we believe the past was easier to predict than it actually was.
Exactly.
But every decision should be judged based on the information available at that moment.
Right.
That idea is useful because it helps people learn from mistakes without being trapped by regret.
Absolutely.
A mistake does not always mean the decision was foolish.
Sometimes it means the situation changed, new information appeared, or unexpected events happened.
So good decision makers are not people who never make mistakes.
Exactly.
They are people who learn quickly from mistakes.
That is the difference.
I think another skill connected to good decisions is knowing when to ask for advice.
Yes, many people misunderstand independence. They think making their own decisions means never listening to others.
But that can actually limit their perspective.
Exactly.
Other people can see things we cannot see.
They may have different experiences, knowledge, or viewpoints.
The important thing is not to let others make decisions for us.
Right, good advice should improve our thinking, not replace it.
So maybe a strong decision-making process looks something like this. Understand the situation, recognize your emotions, consider different perspectives, and then choose an action.
That is a very practical framework.
It sounds simple,
But applying it consistently takes awareness.
because our brains naturally want quick answers.
Exactly.
After exploring this topic, one thing becomes clear. Making better decisions is not about becoming a perfect thinker.
I agree.
It is about understanding our human nature,
Knowing our patterns,
recognizing our emotions,
creating better habits.
and giving ourselves the chance to improve.
Exactly.
When we talk about making better decisions, there is one area we cannot ignore: the big decisions that shape the direction of our lives. These are the choices that often create the most pressure because they feel permanent.
Yes, everyday decisions usually have small consequences, but major decisions can feel like they define our future. Choosing a career, moving to another country, ending or starting a relationship, or making a major financial decision can create a lot of uncertainty.
And because these choices feel so important, people often become afraid of making the wrong one.
That fear is very common. Many people imagine there is one perfect choice hidden somewhere, and their job is to find it.
But does that perfect choice really exist?
In many cases, probably not.
That is an interesting idea.
Because life is not like a multiple choice exam where only one answer is correct. Many different choices can lead to meaningful outcomes if we are willing to adapt.
I think this is something people often forget. They imagine that successful people always make the right decisions from the beginning.
Yes, we usually see the final result, but we do not see all the uncertainty, mistakes, and adjustments behind it.
Someone may have changed careers several times before finding something they enjoy.
Someone may have failed in business before creating something successful.
Someone may have made choices that look strange to others, but eventually worked well for them.
Exactly.
So a decision should not only be judged by the immediate result.
Right, sometimes a choice that seems unsuccessful at first can provide experience, knowledge, or opportunities that become valuable later.
This brings us to the topic of regret. Almost everyone has decisions they wish they had made differently.
Yes, regret is a very human emotion.
Some people spend a lot of time thinking about the past.
They replay old choices and imagine different outcomes.
What if I had chosen another job?
What if I had started earlier?
What if I had taken that opportunity?
Exactly.
Can regret be useful?
Absolutely. Regret can teach us important lessons. It can show us what we value and what we want to do differently in the future.
So regret itself is not the problem.
Right, the problem is when people become trapped in regret.
When they keep looking backward instead of using the lesson to move forward.
Exactly.
A mature approach is asking, what can this experience teach me?
Rather than only asking, why did I make that mistake?
Another fascinating part of decision-making is intuition. People often say, trust your instincts.
Yes, many people believe intuition is mysterious, almost like a feeling that appears from nowhere.
But psychology has a different explanation.
Exactly. Intuition is often the result of accumulated experience. Our brains can recognize patterns quickly, even before we consciously explain them.
So intuition is not always random.
Right, an experienced doctor, athlete, or professional may notice something immediately because they have seen similar situations many times before.
Their brain processes information very quickly.
Exactly.
But can intuition also be wrong?
Definitely.
Especially when we are dealing with unfamiliar situations.
Yes, a feeling can come from experience, but it can also come from fear, assumptions, or personal bias.
So we should not blindly follow every feeling.
Exactly.
Maybe the best approach is to respect intuition, but also examine it.
That is a very balanced way to think about it.
For example, someone may feel nervous about a new opportunity.
Right.
That feeling could mean the opportunity is risky.
Yes.
But it could also mean the opportunity is challenging and unfamiliar.
Exactly.
The emotion itself does not automatically tell us the answer.
We need to understand where the emotion comes from.
This idea connects with courage. Many good decisions require people to move forward even when they feel uncertain.
Absolutely.
Courage does not mean having no fear.
Exactly.
It means being able to act while fear exists.
That is an important distinction.
Someone who waits until they feel completely confident may never take action.
Because confidence often comes after experience, not before it.
That is a powerful idea. Many people think they need confidence before they start.
But often, starting is what creates confidence.
Learning a language is a good example.
Yes.
People may wait until their English is perfect before speaking.
But speaking is how they improve.
The same applies to many areas of life.
Exactly.
So perhaps better decision-making requires a willingness to learn through action.
Yes, decisions are not only conclusions, they are also experiments.
Experiments.
Think of a choice as a way to collect information. You take action, observe the result, and adjust.
That removes some of the pressure of needing to be perfect.
Exactly.
After this discussion, I feel that good decision-makers are not people who always know the answer.
I agree.
They are people who can handle uncertainty.
People who can learn from results.
People who can adjust when situations change.
People who understand themselves.
And people who are willing to keep growing.
Exactly.
There is one final area I want to explore: how our decisions create the story of our lives.
That is a beautiful way to describe it.
Because every choice is like a small sentence in a much larger story.
Yes.
Some choices create new possibilities.
Some choices teach us important lessons.
Some choices change the direction we thought we were going.
But all of them become part of our experience.
When we look back at everything we have discussed today, one thing becomes clear. Decision-making is not simply about choosing between different options. It is about understanding ourselves, understanding the world around us, and understanding the reasons behind our choices.
Exactly. A decision is never just a single moment. It is connected to our experiences, our beliefs, our emotions, and the habits we have developed over time.
That is why two people can face the same situation and make completely different choices.
Yes, they may have the same information, but their interpretation of that information can be very different.
One person may see a challenge as an opportunity.
Another person may see the same challenge as a threat.
The situation is the same, but the meaning they give it changes their decision.
Exactly.
I think this is why self-awareness is one of the most valuable skills a person can develop.
Absolutely.
Because without self-awareness, we may repeat the same patterns without understanding why.
We may continue making choices based on old fears, habits, or assumptions.
But once we become aware of those patterns, we have the ability to change them.
That is where real growth begins.
So, what are some practical questions people can ask themselves before making an important decision?
There are several useful questions. For example, am I choosing this because it matches my values or because I am trying to satisfy someone else's expectations?
That is a powerful question.
Another one is, am I avoiding this choice because it is truly wrong for me or because I am afraid of discomfort?
That question can reveal a lot.
Yes, sometimes fear protects us, but sometimes fear prevents us from growing.
So we need to understand the difference.
Exactly.
Another useful question might be, will this decision help my future self?
I like that question because it encourages long-term thinking.
Our present self often wants immediate comfort.
While our future self may want different things.
For example, our present self may want to avoid difficult learning.
But our future self may appreciate the skills we develop.
Our present self may want to spend money immediately.
But our future self may value financial security.
This idea of thinking about our future self is interesting because we often treat our future self like a different person.
Yes, psychologically, many people feel disconnected from their future selves.
They understand what they want today, but they do not always consider what they will need later.
Exactly.
Developing a relationship with our future self can improve many decisions.
Because we begin to see long-term consequences more clearly.
I also think good decision-making requires accepting that mistakes are unavoidable.
Absolutely.
Some people spend so much energy trying to avoid every mistake that they become afraid to make any choice.
Yes, but avoiding all risk also means avoiding many opportunities.
A life without mistakes may also be a life without exploration.
Exactly.
That is an important balance. Being careful is valuable, but being too afraid can limit our growth.
Right.
The goal is not to make perfect decisions.
Because perfection is impossible.
The goal is to make thoughtful decisions and learn from the results.
Exactly.
I think there is another lesson here about patience. Better decisions often require slowing down.
Yes.
Modern life encourages quick reactions.
Messages arrive instantly.
News spreads instantly.
Opinions are shared instantly.
But important decisions often need time.
Exactly.
Taking time does not mean being unable to decide.
Right.
It means giving yourself enough space to think clearly.
Sometimes the best decision is made after stepping away from the pressure for a moment.
A little distance can create a better perspective.
Exactly.
After exploring the psychology of decisions, I feel that decision-making is really a lifelong skill.
I agree.
It is not something people master once and never need to improve.
Because life keeps changing.
New situations create new choices.
New experiences create new understanding.
And we continue learning about ourselves.
Exactly.
If we had to summarize today's conversation in a few ideas, what would you choose?
I would say, first, understand that your decisions are influenced by many hidden factors, including emotions, habits, and your environment.
Second, become more aware of your own patterns.
Third, do not wait for perfect certainty. Learn, adjust, and grow through action.
And finally, remember that every small decision contributes to the person you become.
Exactly.
I love that final idea. Our lives are not created by one single decision.
They are created by thousands of small choices.
The way we spend our mornings.
The way we use our time.
The people we choose to learn from.
The habits we build.
The thoughts we repeat.
All of these choices slowly shape our future.
So becoming better at decision-making is not only about making smarter choices.
It is about becoming more conscious of the life we are creating.
That is a meaningful way to look at it.
Yes.
Every decision is a chance to learn.
Every choice is a chance to grow.
And every moment gives us another opportunity to choose differently.
Exactly.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode.
We hope this conversation helped you understand your own decisions in a new way.
Remember, you do not need to make perfect choices.
You just need to keep learning from the